Hello and welcome to BYJU'S Exam Prep IAS. Welcome to the big news. The topic for today's discussion, Delhi Declaration adopted by UNSC Counter-Terrorism Committee. Before we understand what this topic is in greater detail, a quick gentle reminder. BYJU'S Exam Prep IAS has already launched its official Telegram channel. If you have not yet joined the channel, please do join so that you get all the current affairs related updates. Let's get started and try and understand what is this topic all about. First up, let's look into the background. We have one of the committees called as the Counter-Terrorism Committee. Why was this created in the first place? United States of America saw one of the deadly terrorist attack on its soil on 11th of September 2001. In order to ensure that they have a counter-terrorism strategy, the United Nations Security Council adopted one of the resolutions called as the Resolution 1373. What is this resolution all about? This happens to be a counter-terrorism measure. There is a state. In case a state realizes that there are terrorists in this particular country, they are planning to organize terrorist activities with respect to another country. Such country will have to immediately ban it. In case they are using the finances should have been frozen, and at the same time all the safe havens in their country will have to be eliminated. So the first point is, you know for the fact that there are terrorists, freeze their assets. In case they are planning to conduct an activity, ensure that you give this information to another country and ensure that the safe havens are immediately eliminated is the basic objective of resolution 1373. So we required one of the committees to monitor this resolution 1373, and that particular committee is called as the Counter-Terrorism Committee. So whatever objectives were defined under the resolution 1373 had to be monitored, and that monitoring committee is called as the Counter-Terrorism Committee. The committee consists of 15 Security Council members and is tasked with monitoring the implementation of Resolution 1373. Who are the 15 Security Council members? We will have 5 permanent members. We will also have 10 non-permanent members. What are the objectives of this particular committee? Is to criminalize the financing of terrorism, freeze without delay any funds related to persons involved in any acts of terrorism. So if a person or an organization is involved in terrorism related activities, freeze their accounts. They should not be able to finance anything for the terrorism related activities. Deny all forms of financial support for the terrorist group. Suppress the provision of safe haven, sustenance or support for the terrorists. Let's say for example, there are a group of terrorists, Lashkar-e-Taiba, or let's say for example Al-Qaeda. These are the terrorist organizations. If there is a country which is housing them, providing them shelter, disable them so that you do not become a menace for the greater humanity. For example, we had Osama bin Laden. Osama bin Laden was provided a safe haven in Pakistan. Safe haven basically means that particular country will allow a terrorist organization or an individual in their home country so that this person is protected. Share information with other governments on any groups practicing or planning terrorist acts. If there is an organization or an individual which is planning to conduct a terrorist related activity, please share this information with that country as well as with the United Nations Security Council. Cooperate with other governments in the investigation, detection, arrest, extradition, prosecution of those involved in such acts, and criminalize active and passive assistance for terrorism in domestic law and bring violators to justice. Apart from the international laws that we have, where you have to respect the public international law, make sure that you also have a domestic law that is a regional centric law so that you are able to completely dismantle this terrorist outfit that is present in the country. So the objective of Counter-Terrorism Committee is to ensure that all these processes are followed in a particular country. Why are we discussing this? That is because India hosted a special meeting of United Nations Security Council's Counter-Terrorism Committee, which discussed the overarching theme of countering the use of new and emerging technologies for terrorist purposes. This was the first such meeting of the United Nations Security Council in India since its establishment back in the year 2001. India is currently one of the 10 non-permanent members of the United Nations Security Council. It is also serving 2-year term as well, which is why it happened to organize this committee's meeting in India. What was the focus of this meeting? As the theme denotes, countering the use of new and emerging technologies for terrorist purposes. What exactly is happening? As much as technology is used for all the good reasons and for the advancement of the humanitarian considerations, it has also been used as a greater menace as well. This is also being turned against the humanity as well, and they are leveraging this technology to ensure that terrorist activities are perpetuated. Let's take the example of social media. Social media has become a tool where we would be able to communicate with the near and dear ones. We would be also able to advertise as well. We would also be able to sell the product. But this social media is also being used by the terrorists to radicalize number of individuals. So how are we going to make sure that this social media does not become an avenue and a platform for the radicalization of the individuals is one such idea. How increased use of the internet and other communication technologies are being used by the terrorists to put out an agenda of radicalization, and at the same time there have been financial technologies as well, there have been unmanned air vehicles as well. These have been currently being used by the terrorist organization to push their own agenda of terrorism related activities. So the theme for this particular meeting happened to be countering the use of new and emerging technologies for the terrorist purposes. At the end of the meeting, they released what is called as the Delhi Declaration. This Delhi Declaration are the future steps that the United Nations Security Council and its members will have to take. What are the key takeaways? Terrorism in all forms and manifestations is one of the most serious threats. Any acts of terrorism are criminal and unjustifiable regardless of their motivations, whenever, wherever, and by whomsoever committed. So, the first thing that it says is that terrorism in all forms should be completely prohibited. Who does it, why he does it, where he does it, the form of terrorism should all be eliminated, is the first major objective of the Delhi Declaration. Deep concern about terrorist adaptation, use of new and emerging technologies for terrorist purposes, innovations in technology may offer significant counter-terrorism opportunities. This point is emphasizing on the use of technology by the radical terrorist organizations. As of now, they are being used for recruitment and incitement in order to bring an end to it. What we require is coordination, one from the government, next from the private sector, where it is these technology companies which have come up with it, and ultimately the civil society also plays a major role, says the second major pointer. So basically, if we have to eliminate use of technology for radicalization and incitement, government will have to have a vigilant eyes, the technological companies will have to monitor it, and at the same time the civil society should be given an awareness, and all the radicalization that has taken place should be de-radicalized. Innovations in financial technologies such as virtual assets and new financial instruments present a risk of being misused, including the terrorist financing. What do we understand by this? Let's say for example, we have new blockchain technologies that have come into picture. We have the Bitcoin, we also have number of virtual currencies as well. All this is advancement of the technology which creates a decentralized system. However, such decentralized system can also be a problematic area for the countries. Why? Because it is through this particular virtual currency they are able to transfer the money, and at the same time they have included themselves into the money laundering process as well. In the past, we have the Financial Action Task Force which has taken number of initiatives, but for the overall comprehensive elimination of this use of money laundering techniques, nations will have to come together, is the third pointer. The fourth says concern against increasing global misuse of unmanned air vehicle system by terrorists to conduct attacks and incursions into critical infrastructure and soft targets or public places, and to traffic drugs and arms. What do we understand by this? Let's say for example, we have number of instances where the drones, unmanned air vehicles have been used. Let's take the example in Saudi Arabia, or let's take the example of UAE. There have been some terrorists who have made use of unmanned air vehicles to launch against the critical infrastructure. If you look at India and Pakistan border as well, Pakistan's non-state actors as well as maybe state actors as well, they would have used these drones to dump the equipment along the border areas. They've also been able to transfer drugs along Rajasthan and even Punjab as well. The fifth says zero tolerance towards terrorism through the full and effective implementation of UN Security Council resolutions. Member states to fulfill their obligations enshrined in relevant international counter-terrorism conventions. So there are some conventions, there are some rules and regulations that have been put up in the international law. All these countries which are part of it will have to follow and abide by the international rules and regulations. Member states obligated to prevent and suppress financing of terrorist acts and to refrain from providing support to entities, persons involved in terrorist activities, including by suppressing recruitment of members of terrorist groups consistent with international law and eliminating the supply of weapons to the terrorists. Terrorist opportunities to access safe havens continues to be a significant concern. All member states must cooperate fully in the fight against terrorism in order to identify safe havens, deny terrorists access to them, and bring them to the justice. As we initially discussed, Pakistan had provided safe haven to Osama bin Laden. In fact, India and United States of America also said that Pakistan trains number of terrorist organizations and at the same time number of key conspirators of Mumbai's 26/11 terror attacks are also provided safe haven in Pakistan as well. It is in this particular backdrop India and United States of America wanted to penalize number of terrorists and wanted to put sanctions on them, but we have an unfortunate incident in the form of China which is blocking this particular proposal made by India and United States of America. So they had also criticized China for blocking attempts by India and United States of America to list terrorists at the United Nations. But do note, the final Delhi Declaration did not include these concerns of India and United States of America over China's blocking on terrorist designations at the United Nations Security Council, but rest of it was added as part of the Delhi Declaration. It is this that we have to understand with respect to this topic. So this is it for today. Thank you for watching. All the best.